Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kellie and Gail. This is episode 37.
Yay.
3 and 7 is 10, which is 0 or 1. You could do it either way. So I guess that's new beginnings for us.
Sure, we'll start over every 37 episodes.
So, one of the things Kellie and I, of course, before the show, were talking about what it was that we were going to talk about today. And one of the things that we realized is you've now seen both of us channeling, and we've never really talked about channeling. So we thought that might be a good place to start. So, Kellie, what are your thoughts about channeling?
I started channeling kind of accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through the years, teaching different people and mentoring people, several different kinds of people actually do that. Usually it's people who are deeply connected, but I had someone that came in cold, literally walked in off the street to a studio I used to have and was channeling, and they no idea what they were doing. So it can happen that way. You need to be careful when you're channeling. If you are that open,
Mm-hmm.
which you have to be channeling, you need to make really clear that you are only going to accept, good, your light, love. You're not going to let dark entities come in, because that is like when you start channeling, when you open up, you literally send a beam of light up into the ethers that everyone can see you then,
Mm-hmm.
including the darkness. And I use the term loosely, the darkness, because sometimes you can have a dark entity masquerading as someone who is very light. You can have a light being who has some definite dark tendencies. I've seen both ways. So the way I channel is I just let it go through. I just, okay, who's talking? What do you want to say? Let's do this. And all of that happens that quick in my head because, I am not, if I'm flowing, I'm not going to stop everything and protect myself. And I'm just going to do it mentally. Um, Once you're used to that sensation, and it is kind of weird feeling like there's somebody else using you to talk, it happens quicker and quicker. I have shut them off. I have stopped midstream when I kind of trace back who is this, and I find out who it is, and I don't want to talk to them. So you can hang up on them just like a spiritual phone. You just hang up.
I think that I've probably channeled most of my life, but when I was taking my opening to intuition class, that famous class where everything happened within a week, that takes most people like 5 years to go through. We went out to lunch one day, and this woman, and now it's probably was either Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary, um, came into my body, and I was looking out, like I could feel her in my body, and like I was looking out through her eyes, which were my eyes, at the world. But when I looked down at my hands, they were her hands, not mine.
Right.
And so, and the teacher had already told me I wasn't allowed to ask any more questions because it's annoying the whole class. So it was just such an interesting experience, and I had no idea what to do with it. And I think that probably happens more often, but no one talks about it.
Right.
No
Right.
one is okay with talking about it. Everyone's just like, well, let's just push it back and pretend this didn't happen because I don't know how to make sense out of it.
Well, and there's a huge amount of fear there,
Mhm,
that you're going to be deemed crazy. When
mhm,
I was a kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, I would have horrible nightmares of being locked away in an institution because I could hear voices. People would talk through me. I was at a funeral one time with my grandmother, and I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't shut up. And I started channeling this deceased person. And she's talking about, why did you take that purse with the jewels in it? You know that was supposed to go to her.
mhm.
And I said that at the funeral. And my grandmother looked at me and went, oh, don't do that now. but I've learned to control it, of course,
Mhm.
since then. But it's eerie when you know somebody else is using your body to talk. And if you go out in public and you say, there is this being that is using me to talk, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to refer you to an exorcist or
Uh-huh.
they're going to lock you up. So I think that's why we don't talk about it
Uh,
because there's so much fear around there.
I
Um,
was I was taking a healing class, and had a session with the teacher, and my crown chakra opened really wide, and Ashtar crawled in my body, and I remember having the conversation, "There is not enough room in here for both of us. You can be as close to me as you want outside my body, but you can't be inside my body with me."
right.
So at the end, I didn't say anything. At the end of the session, I said to the teacher, "Did you notice anything odd today?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I saw it." So,
It's and sometimes, like for the sake of the show, it feels like it's very safe. If
mm,
I know I'm not going to be interrupted, I'm not going to be judged, I'm perfectly safe, I will just roll with it. I just let them go because usually when I go back and look at what they've said, it's either something I needed to hear or
mm,
it's something I know someone else needed to hear. So, but like I said before the show, there have been times I've gone back and watched our shows over and go, I don't even remember wearing that. I don't remember that entire show,
mhm.
So it it happens sometimes.
And for those of you who watched last week's show, I think at some point I said that the ice beings came in, and sure enough, my eye, starting that night, the blood finally started to dissipate from my eye, which was so weird.
Yep.
Like, right after that, it started to get better, and now it's probably 95% better now, so I thought that that was so cool, and so, people have been asking me, "What happened?" I said, "Well, they did a lot of healing work on me, and, they reversed it and re-engineered it to go in the other direction." So, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how they work
Mhm,
most of the time. I got very, very sick. My doctor wanted to put me in the hospital. I did my own healing
mhm,
ceremony, went to bed, and that entire night I was wrapped in like a silk, maybe. I was going to say rayon, but maybe it was silk green shroud of some kind. And I would wake up and I would just see green and I'd go back to sleep. And I finally tried to sit up and I felt a hand. Nope, not yet. and, and when I woke up, when I finally did get out of bed, I felt fine.
mhm,
So that's another area where fear holds people back. It's I've seen enough weirdness in my life that there's really not a whole lot that scares me anymore.
mhm.
And I think that works in my favor sometimes. Um, I have a tendency of coming up with infections or illnesses that nobody else on the planet seems to
Nope,
get.
I'm the other one.
And my doctor just goes, I don't know. Let's try this. But if I go inside and get out of my own way, they will heal me.
Mhm,
And I have learned that time and time again, but I'm also very, very stubborn and I still fight. Even though I know how it's going to go. I can see it, I can feel it, I know it's there. I'm just going to fight first. Just give me my dramatic freak out moment and then we'll proceed. And I think a lot of people do that.
mhm. Yeah, so welcome to our viewers. I know a couple people have popped on. If you guys have any questions, again, please feel free to post them in the comments section. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube after we've recorded it, please subscribe to the channel. Really hard
Yeah.
for me to do that, but please subscribe to the channel. Any of questions, reach out to Kelly and I, and we will make sure to talk about it the following week when we do our next one. So we always want to answer people's questions and help people on their journeys. Someone asked me last night, I was in a group, you know, what was the most important thing to me? And probably because of my experience with the opening that I had and how it went, I said the most important thing to me is helping people in a responsible way to have the experience they're meant to have, not necessarily the experience that I had.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sometimes I feel like a Sherpa, you know, those people that guide you through tough terrain. That's kind of how I feel a lot of the time. And it's fine. It's not like it's a horrible thing. It's a wonderful thing. It can be a very beautiful thing.
Mhm,
Um, when I work with a lot of young people. I do not know why I tended to work with young people. I've worked with older people too, people of all ages, whatever. But when I see the light come on, you know, when someone gets it,
mhm,
and that is the most amazing thing for me. That is the most incredible privilege that I've been given. And every time I see that, it just gives me chills. I'm like, yes, you know.
mhm,
But it's why the show is so important because we don't have these conversations
mhm,
as a rule. In other cultures, they tend to talk more, but in the West, we're pretty stifled spiritually. Someone was talking to me earlier today about the sheer number of people who are coming out and declaring themselves atheists, that they don't believe in anything.
mhm.
And, you know, my reaction was probably not not what he was expecting, because I said, "Oh, how sad for them." Well, why? I mean, he was expecting me to present some kind of evidence, I think, something why this is wrong and this is right. And truthfully, there is no right or wrong. It's an individual thing. Now,
Mhm,
that doesn't mean you're free to go out and commit crime or treat people horrible. That's not what it's about. But what you believe is right for you to believe. I
mhm,
really think, and I've talked to a couple of Hindu people that I know, and if it is teaching you to lose all faith in everything, who am I to say that's wrong? I didn't design your plan. You
mhm,
know, that's above my pay grade. Um, but I do think it's for a reason. I don't think it's that more people are becoming atheists. I think just like several years ago when everybody was talking about their transgender children, I think it's what we're talking about today.
mhm.
You know, next week, next month, gonna be different.
Well,
Promise you.
what I just heard is maybe to frame it a little bit different. I don't know that, and maybe people really are becoming atheists, but I think people feel lost and have lost hope. And therefore, why believe in anything because they just keep getting let down.
Right.
And
And I've been there, you know, I've been right to that edge.
mhm,
But I think humanity as a whole
mhm,
has lost faith. And I think there are many beings here on this planet right now who are trying, desperately trying to lead people back. You
mhm,
know, it's not and this goes right back into channeling because it's not what we're told, it's what we believe. And
mhm.
you can tell someone anything, and if they don't believe it, they don't believe it. You know, that's like psychic surgeries. I don't know why they're telling me to talk about
That's
psychic
because I
surgery.
talked about that last week in a radio interview that I did.
Yeah. So, but they're talking about things, you know, people are reaching, you
Mhm,
know, people are really struggling. And you can have psychic surgery that is very, very effective. It happened with me.
mhm.
You know, honest to God, it happened with me. Um, and I would have died. several times this lifetime, actually. But things like that, if it's only going to work if you believe it works. You can say the same thing about Western medicine. It's only going to work if you believe it works. Going back to channeling, if you believe that you are channeling a divine being or an ET or your guide or your angel, whatever it is, that's what you're doing. But I see people every day on social media trying to profess their divine abilities, and what they're doing is not channeling, it's not pure.
Well, to channel, you have to get out of the way. And so usually when my experience has been when I've channeled or other people have channeled, usually the language changes, tone of voice changes, and things like that. So sometimes, like when I've had people say they're channeling a message for me, I'm like, really? Because energetically, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're just telling me what you think I need to hear.
We've talked
And
about
maybe I'm still a little skeptical. Now I know I've channeled, but I still get really skeptical about it. That's that part of me that has a hard time. Even though I have all these gifts, I'm like, what does this mean? And what does this do? And why can I do this? And how does this happen? And where is this coming from? And yeah, I
yeah.
have lots of questions.
Yeah, well, I do too. And I've said before, I routinely fight with my guides. They'll tell me, you need to do this. This is the direction you should be going. You can go this way, but you know what you're going to do? You're going to have a great big circle and you're going to end up right back here. And I do it anyway. I just, that's just my personality. But we've talked before, even about readers
Mhm,
who don't get out of their way. With anything of a spiritual nature, you really need to learn to get out of your own way.
mhm,
Even something like paranormal investigating. It is not me doing this house clearing. I am merely the vessel. I'm just the mouthpiece. And it took me a long time to realize that. It took me a few scuffles, a few bruises, a few battles before I went, oh, yeah, there's somebody more powerful than I am. And it's just maybe that's the conversation we need to have about faith and
mhm,
humanity losing trust, because some of the things that people take for granted are their miracles,
mhm.
but they don't see it that way.
Yeah.
Um, it's I saw it was actually told to me at the feed store. That's where I get all my news, the feed store. Um, and somebody was in a horrible accident. The car was completely obliterated. They have no idea how this guy walked away with minor scratches and bruises. I do. There was your miracle, and they're looking for, well, he needed that car. That's really terrible. I know. Well, we're going to have to go car shopping. He didn't have insurance. Huh? And that's the road they're going down. What about the fact that the guy walked away, unharmed? And it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was just the people I was around, but in the past, we looked more at what an amazing thing that he's okay. Thank God he's okay,
Mhm.
And we didn't so much worry about the things. And it seems like we got away from that and we got more focused on things. It's the fire that we had out here. That's kind of what amazed me about these people is um, they weren't so much about the stuff. They were about the animals. Got to get the animal. Where did that cat go? And that's the kind of conversations that I was overhearing. That's where we need to get back to. I don't know how we got here from channeling, but apparently I'm channeling. But that's what we need to do. We need to shift our perspective. And I think, I don't care. You want to call yourself an atheist, you want to call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. I don't care. But at your heart and in your soul, somewhere deep down, and sometimes it's very far down, you do have the connection
Mhm.
to your faith, to your belief system. I really do think they've just turned it off.
Mhm.
If you want to be pessimistic, you can go down that road. Sure. Go for it. I've been there. Didn't work out so well. But it's I have hope against hope that people will start waking up and start listening to the universe, because everyone always asks me, how do you talk to dead people, how do you see through the veil, how do you channel, how do you do, and I have a number of gifts which I have not always been grateful for, but I do believe everybody has that potential.
So you
And
should now plug what our next thing is doing, because that seems like a great segue.
our class,
Our class.
yes, we're doing a class. You talk about the class. You're doing all of the promo stuff for the class.
Yeah, we're gonna do we're calling it awakening your intuition, because as Kelly just said, we believe that everyone already has it. It's about rediscovering it in yourself. So it's going to be a 5-week course going through some of those things and some activities and exercises and interacting. And we'll be talking about it probably more next week on the show. We can give more specifics. And if you're interested, how you can sign up. We're just working on the flyer right now. So, and we're hoping to start it the first week of June.
Yep,
So, yeah.
very cool.
So if anyone has any interest in doing that that's watching, please reach out to one of us and we will give you the details around that. And it, of course, like everything else, will be on Zoom. So, yeah, because I don't think I can fly back and forth from Arizona with work to teach it in person. So,
Might be fun to try. Yeah,
yeah.
that's someone described my place with everything that I am doing now by myself as almost controlled chaos.
Hmm.
And to me, it makes perfect sense because I have a routine down.
Hmm.
And when I have days where I have to be away for longer than, well, like half a day, like
Hmm.
Monday and then today too, it throws me off kilter. And it's so funny that I noticed that about myself. I came home this afternoon and I was like, what was I doing? Oh, yeah. And it's just, my dog looks at me like, what is wrong with you?
Hmm.
But we get into that habit, we get into our own routines.
Hmm.
And I think humanity has developed some really bad routines and some really bad habits. So hopefully our class and the show will help people get out of that.
Hmm. And just in case anyone's curious, 1 week we will be drawing mandalas. So in the class. So everyone will get to create their own. But yeah, just interesting stuff. And I think this is the time, especially after the full moon and the eclipse and all that energy, is what do you really want to bring forward in your life? What direction do you want to go? I think this is a choice point for so many people on the planet right now. And what and how are you going to choose to be?
It's more serious than simply making a choice.
Mhm.
At this point, it's imperative that people wake up. And we've been hitting the snooze button as humanity for a very long time. So people just kind of float through life from one fiasco to the next. And that's the way it's kind of been for the last, well, it really started, I think, in 2019, the end of 2019. But then going through the whole COVID thing, people just got used to gloom and doom, I think, and need to do something to shake that up. I think that's purely my own opinion. But I do think some people are starting maybe to realize what's happening. But
Mhm.
there has been this ginormous war going on for years. And it's literally like Star Wars good versus evil kind of stuff.
Well, and we were talking a little bit about that, is that the stuff that you're seeing on TV and in movies is usually, from somebody I heard speak about it years ago, is about 20 to 30 years behind what's actually happening. It's like
Right,
they're trying to prepare us so that when the stuff happens, we don't, you know, like I think about Men in Black and there's so many TV shows in the 80s about aliens. There was V and Battlestar Galactica and lots of reboots of Star Trek, Star Wars, The Last Starfighter. People are creative, but that stuff drops in from somewhere for people to create. And I don't know if people actually think about it. It's not like it comes, like we can even use Harry Potter,
right.
you know.
Um,
Maybe
I,
it's a remembering more so than an imagination.
yeah, yeah. The one thing that got me with the first Star Wars that came out, I remember sitting in the theater. I'd gone to the movie with my cousin who was every bit as geeky as I am. And eh, in a galaxy a long time ago, galaxy far, far away, all that kind of stuff. And like, oh, this happened already. And in my teenage mind, through the whole movie, it's like I was making mental notes about things that had already happened. And having had some abduction experiences, it made perfect sense to me. Yes, of course, this is the way it happened. And, of course, my mother called me delusional. I get that a lot. But, I did as a child. Something wrong with her. I don't know what it is. She talks to dead people. But that's the way my mother sounded too. It just it touched me in my already geeky tendencies to be, yeah, yeah, I can buy into this. And the thing is, a whole bunch of other people, millions of other people also bought into it. They didn't realize what was going on. But it's interesting how things happen. I'm very fortunate that I know a rocket scientist, a real one, works for NASA. And he has access to certain videos. And there are some that are pretty familiar. And when I saw them, I was like, whoa, that's wild. But there's like a whole piece of the government that has been actively researching and actively recording all of this stuff for.
Well, we also have the, Close Encounters of the Third
Yep.
Kind. And then they said to mention signals, first contact. It, you know, there's a reason that there's a reason that everyone is fascinated. Atlantis, Stargate, the TV show. There's a reason that everyone is so fascinated with that.
Yep.
And I'm not sure it's all because it's an imagination. I think lots of people connect with it because it's more of a remembering and there's
Yeah.
a comfort to it in their soul. They just don't know why.
Yeah. It feels very plausible.
Mhm.
There have been so many different series, and really the characters are sometimes interchangeable with
Mhm.
the similar stories, and it just plausible. I think that's what it is. I loved the bar scene. Sorry, viewers commenting on the bar scene in Star Wars with all the beings. That just felt like walking into the neighborhood bar to me. It really did. It it was quite the thing to come out at the time that it did, though. I think it shook
1976, isn't that when Star Wars came out?
76. Yeah, yeah. It was way ahead of its time.
Mhm. Yeah, and all that stuff was already happening, starting to prepare us for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of theorists that have talked about things being done in movies and in TV shows that are really orchestrated behind the scenes to prepare humanity for what's coming. I don't know if anyone here keeps up on like MUFON or, Skinwalker Ranch is a big thing right now. Everybody's talking about. Um, but there are places right now on the planet where people are actively engaged in trying to create a dialogue with different things. There's magnetic anomalies this place, and over there's something else that's different. And it's all happening right now. When you talk to people, they, oh, that's not happening. That's all CGI. That was CGI. That's everybody's favorite thing. That's CGI. No, it's not.
They keep giving me a list of every movie that's been made. So now they're saying, don't forget about Independence Day. And don't forget about, like, okay, I got it. There's lots of
There's a
movies.
lot of them. Yeah.
But I just keep in my head, they just keep listing, and then there's this one, and then there's this one, and then there's this one. I'm like, I think our viewers get it. I don't think I need to list every single movie. They're like, but we want you to. I'm like, yeah, no,
No, don't have time for that.
that's just kind of funny.
What is curious to me, I think of these different scenarios in my head all the time. What are people really going to do when they find out that everything we've been saying for years is true?
Hmm.
Do you think that's going to reinvigorate people's faith in things? I'm not sure about that. I think they may go the opposite direction. And I think that's why there seems to be an urgency. Every evening when I do meditations, I get different beings telling me, this needs to happen and and I see the universe like a giant jigsaw puzzle. And I see the pieces that are missing, and I see them floating over here, and I'm like, wait a minute, and it's more of it is becoming clear, and at the same time, there are some really crucial pieces missing, and that's humanity.
Hmm.
As long as people keep sticking their heads in the sand, nothing's gonna change.
Yeah, now they're just showing me Egypt and what, the pyramids really are, and um, the Sphinx, what the Sphinx, well, I mean, I've known for years, but they want me to make it speakable, and there's more pyramids all over the world than people
Yep.
think there are. And they were all built as a system for energy purposes, just like we have ley lines now, and there's the tribes who carved different signs into things. They didn't necessarily have pyramids. I have a book on it somewhere. But I think it's all of that is there to help us remember, except we're not looking at it from the right lens.
Right, right.
Because if everything happens simultaneously, we keep looking at it as the past. But it's happening with us right now. So it's just really interesting when you start to really think about all that stuff, and then your brain just kind of goes.
Yep.
So one of our viewers wrote, I think there will always be those who hate what they don't understand, which is sad because they will never understand the celestial beings might just actually be here to help us and not hurt us. I
Right.
think that can be true, and I think it goes both ways. There are some here to help us, and there are some here to keep us stuck so that we don't move further as a humanity. So I
Yep.
think both is true.
Yeah, it's still a battle of good versus evil. And even though there's always a little bit of evil in the good and a little bit of good in the evil, there's still a battle. Every time I hear someone, usually a self-professed guru, saying that you have to be all in the light, you have to be completely in so I'm supposed to give away part of myself. Yeah. Because we all have good and bad. It's the yin and yang. It's a balance. You have to learn to balance that. Sometimes a dark entity can have a beneficial message.
Mhm.
But before you start talking to them, you need to make sure you're protected I mean, really protected. But I have had that happen where the exact information was held by this being. And what do you do? Not get the information? It was important enough in that scenario that I had to go there. And I went with a team of angels and, all their divine weaponry. Um, but I would not recommend anyone do that without having been properly trained.
Well, I
I
think that that's really interesting, and I want people to really think about this for a minute. And this isn't coming from me, but this is what they want me to say: is that Archangel Michael has a sword and a shield. And there are other archangels who have swords and shields. So
know,
if they're really all of the light, why would they need, if you really start to think about it, why do we depict them with those kinds of things? So I think it's something to really think about, and to think about, what does that bring up for you? If it's the light, why do we need protection from? So it's just, there's lots of questions that come up.
well, yeah, and you have to consider, why might an archangel need weaponry?
Mhm.
Well, because there are archangels of God,
Mhm.
there are archangels of hell, equally powerful in their own way,
Mhm.
and they do have battles. And I've been present in a couple of exorcisms where there was a clash, and we didn't see it, but you could hear the clash, like of a sword hitting a shield.
Mhm.
And the priest that was doing the exorcism, just not the same one I do paranormal activities with, by the way. Um, and I said, what is that? And he says, it is the angels. They're fighting over his soul. And I had never considered that. And when I was sitting there, I was like, whoa, angels fight.
I have such chills right now. It's
Yeah, I do too. But it was eye-opening for me to think that angels fought, because I would have
Mhm.
never come up with that on my own. But you could hear it, and it was brutal, and you know, it was an experience. And when he invited me back for a third time, I said, you know what? I think I've seen enough. Even I have my boundaries here, you know. And but it was eye-opening. And I don't think people think about that um, in that way. But that's why they have swords and shields. You have to figure there's always a balance.
Mhm.
So if there's archangels here, there's got to be archangels here. If there are angels here, there's got to be angels here. And people just don't think about it. Everything has a purpose.
Mhm.
Even very dark things have a purpose. And that purpose is normally, what I've been told, to keep the balance.
Mhm.
You don't want to tilt too far in either direction. And I'm afraid humanity is teetering on the edge here.
So anything that you want to talk about today to kind of wrap things up?
Stay tuned for our class. Tell
And
everyone about it.
please subscribe to our channel if you're watching these videos.
Yes, please. And share it, and comment, because this is kind of important stuff. Yeah.
As always, it has been a pleasure. We will be back again next week. Please reach out to us if there's topics you want us to cover or talk about. We are happy to do that. And we will see you guys all again next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.